Good morning. It's about time for us to start, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce Steve Gaudreau. He is the man who will be working with Jerris in the India work, and I don't know a lot. I don't know any stories to tell about him, but
I got plenty.
In any case, he will start everything off this morning. Jerris is not here yet, and he may be delayed a little bit. So before we begin the class, this man that's coming, I can't think of your name right now, Guy will lead us in prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Steve Gaudreau.
Let's bow at this time. Our merciful Father in heaven, we thank you for giving us the night's rest. We know, dear Lord, that we don't give you enough honor, and we try to say at this time that we owe you full honor for our lives. We especially thank you for the life of Jesus, and it's his name that we always pray. We thank you for what he meant to us. The suffering he went through was immense, and yet he did all this for all of us if we obey him. Thank you now, dear God, for the people that were speaking about the work in India. We ask that you'd continue to bless them. Bless this man that will be coming. Pray that he would continue to do the job in a very huge country that it is. There seems to be a lot more doors open there than there are in the United States. We thank you for his dedication. We thank you for his health. We pray that you'd be with both gentlemen this morning, guide them in their work, keep them safe, and we pray that the results will be of glory to you. And we thank you at this time in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, thank you, and the microphone works. Very good. Yes, I was expecting to kind of meet Jerris here ahead of time. I know you all know Jerris. You don't know who I am, but I'm sure he'll make his way, and it's a blessing to be here. And another blessing, Melissa, my tax lady's here, so I have to be very nice to her. And I keep looking for Jerris, who hopefully will be here since he's preaching, and I'm not. My name is Steve Gaudreau. I am from Weirton, West Virginia, steel mill country, or at least used to be. All those steel mills are gone, torn down, sold. There's still a little bit of work up there, but not much. Just remember growing up and all the billowing smoke and all those reasons those commercials came out where the Indian cried, you know, he had a tear because of the pollution that was going up. Weirton was always on that commercial. But left Weirton back in 1980, joined the Marine Corps. I was a Marine Corps pilot for about 21 years. So one of those childhood dream things, right? You start flying when you're young and somebody tells you that you can do it and get paid for it. And you say, that's where I want to be. So I got to do that for 21 years. And what's scary is this August, I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. This August, I will have been out as long as I was in. The sands of time wait for no man, as it were. So, but anyway, so I got to come to the Manassas Church, got to meet Jerris and Juanita. Jerris on his way, making his way. Good, because if not, you're preaching. And Juanita's here. And so I got to working with Jerris as a deacon early on and got to kind of help him with his the work he did over there. Got to learn the people he was taking care of, where the money was going. I was kind of the guy that wrote the checks and signed the checks and got familiar that way. And then a couple years later, about 9 years ago, in the brief that you're going to see here today, just some pictures that explain a few things. My wife Renee and I got on a plane. They flew us over there. We spent a month there and just learned a whirlwind of things. And what Jerris is likely to do is if you may have a couple of notes for a lesson or a sermon, but he doesn't tell you it's coming. You just kind of show up and they say, we're going to have a class. And I say, great, who's talking? And he says, you are. And I said, okay, and then off we go. So I just brought some slides up that really do two things. in my opinion. They're either going to show you the culture and the people. I think when you're praying for someone to do stuff like that, or you're contributing and you want to know where your money's going, having an idea what the culture's like over there is important. 1.3, 1.4 billion people in that country, and so many more have-nots than there are haves. You're hard-pressed to find anybody that you would consider from this country doing well, although there are. And that's just kind of the way it's set up. The other reason for the pictures is to show you where, if you're praying for the work, if you're contributing to the work, kind of shows you where that money's going and how it's being handled. That's the only purpose I did this, just to give you an idea. This is somewhat dated. My wife and I did this about 9 years ago. The reason why we went, the reason why Jerris has been going for 40 years and 30 years, Juanita, 42, following him over there to India, and many times twice a year. And I just did it once, and it was a long haul. My wife and I are both retired Marines, so we're kind of used to picking up and traveling, but that was quite a trip. But that's the reason we do it. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation for those that are willing and have the means to do so. It's kind of a trademark for what we do. We went back in 2013, obviously pre-COVID and pre-new government and pre a lot of other things, but things don't change much over there. I bring this up just to show you all the places that they took us, or that Jerris sent me and Renee. We started down there in the middle, a little place called Hyderabad, and from Hyderabad we went north to Bhopal. You may remember the incident in Bhopal back in the 70s. I think it was the Dow Chemical Company had a toxic gas release and killed hundreds of people in that town. Just poison gas was going through the air. One of the preachers you'll see here, BJ Doss, he remembers it as a kid, and his mother would put him in the bed, which is where they were told to do, and cover him up so that the gases wouldn't get to him. What they told you to do was not to get out of town and run, because if you were running, you were just kind of sucking up the gas further, and that's what killed a lot of people, but that was in Bhopal. We went from Bhopal to Agra. Anybody know what's in Agra? The Taj Mahal. You know, if you can help it and you go to India, there's brethren there, but you got to take a peek at Taj Mahal. We went up to New Delhi, flew all the way across the bottom side of Nepal, end up in this little town that you see up there under Bhutan called Siliguri. You'll see from a picture there's not a lot going on in Siliguri, but there is a brotherhood up there doing good work. We flew down on the far eastern side of India called Imphal. This place has a particular interest because this was the location of the last Allied combat in World War II, where the Japanese met Indian allies right at this point, and there's signs up and that talk about it and everything. Is pretty interesting. Flew back down to Calcutta, or Kolkata, it's pronounced now, all the way back down to Hyderabad, back down to a place called Kurnool, back to Hyderabad, and then back home. 28 days, 8 cities, continuous teaching and preaching, kind of following in the footsteps of what Jerris and Juanita had already said. So I just wanted to give you an idea of that as you see some of these pictures. There's me 9 years ago without the face hair. That's my wife, Renee, there to my right. And of course, there's always this great welcome when you get into Hyderabad. The brothers are there. They like to put wreaths on you, and they like to put pictures of you in the background. I call it the Billy Graham effect when you go over there. They just light you up and put your pictures up all over the place. And it's just a great welcome, and the babies are, look at the look on this guy's face, like that is the whitest woman I've ever seen since I've been alive. And but the children are great. 2 brothers, P. David and VJ Doss. These guys traveled with us almost the whole way around the country. Sadly and painfully, VJ, who's there on the left, died quickly and suddenly in his home from a heart attack, and I think he was only in his like 52 or was young, and it was just sad to see him go. He was an on-fire preacher. He preached at Bhopal, and he was a blessing to have, as was P. Mark. And this is us gathered there at Bhopal in the church building with some of the brethren there, brothers and related and their wives and such. That's VJ's wife, is it not? And so Juanita would kind of get Renee set up in the different places we'd go to teach classes to the children. They loved the visitor. They loved having that kind of like the role I'm in here now is like a student teacher, you know, the substitute teacher that you like. And it was a blessing for her to be able to teach the kids and to sing songs to them. And and they come to see the visitors. And so she enjoyed that. And I always like to get the front shot because everybody who goes to church, children or older or younger, they all are so colorful. It's just kind of a sight to see sitting, looking at the children or looking at a church or looking at them from behind. But they come dressed, and these children are just happy to be there and really enjoy their Bible classes and really enjoy their singing. I always tell people, I like this slide. I'm holding the Bible and I got my hand out, make it look like I know what I'm doing up there when the real teacher is Jerris getting ready for his sermon. But many times you see VJ there to the right, there's interpreters that are required. And Jerris likes to call his interpreters interrupters because he likes to keep preaching and not wait. I kind of look forward to that pause because I can kind of regroup and get my notes and thoughts together. But and where we are on this ceiling is one of the reasons why we go there, and the work that Jerris and Juanita have been doing is we pay for, organize, and build schools of preaching. And as Jerris will tell you, that's how evangelism works over there. You find a city, you find people, you find a brotherhood, you build a congregation, you build a church building, you build a school of preaching. They become preachers, they go out and make their congregations, and it just goes on and on and on. And that's what the work is doing now, and what we hope that it'll continue to do as time goes on. So that is the unfinished part of the top of the church in Bhopal, School of Preaching. And as you'll see, these are the men who are coming that want to be part of the school and start the school. Now, the only standby with this School of Preaching was that VJ died. And we don't have anybody there to run the school. The good news is he has a son named Boaz, and Boaz is 20s now or something like that. And he's just a good teacher and a good preacher. And what I think everybody's hoping for is he will come back after school, dentistry, right? The daughter's a doctor, and he's going to be a dentist. So BJ did good raising those kids. And hopefully he'll come back. This is now completed. The structure was completed and built. We're just waiting to get somebody back in there to start the School of Preaching. And that many will show up, and that many will go out and start their own congregations and be self-supported, and the word will continue to be preached. I put this slide up just to show you that this is part of India. This is just the way it is. And unlike some of the places here where we have homeless people that are sitting, their places are off the road or in the back someplace. This is right on the main drag, going from the hotel to the church building, and this is just part of what they live. I just realized that I keep turning around, and all I got to do is stare right here. So I have not caught up on my technology. But this is just how a certain portion of the population live, and that's what they deal with, and we look for those people too. Me and Nene, my grandkids call her Nene. This is a baptismal in the church at Bhopal, and I like to show this because you see how much water's in that baptismal? Water is a rare commodity in India, especially at certain times of the year. Sometimes you get these monsoons and rains, and they all have containers, kind of like if you've ever been to New York City, you see all the water units that are sitting on top of the buildings. Well, that's what they have here, trying to catch water. So they will catch water to use to potable water, and then other water is dropped off to them. Get a ration of that that's actually delivered that I think is probably non-potable, right? They use that for their sink and washing clothes and dishes and that kind of stuff. But when you're baptized, that's basically all you're working with. And VJ was a real hustler, and he was really on fire for saving souls, and he always wanted to make sure you got something on camera. And I didn't put it in this slide deck, but he'll put people down that water, and he'll hold them down there till you get the shot. They're not coming up until there's proof that they were baptized. But that's what a lot of the baptisms are like. And if they're not that low, then the containers are no more than maybe 2.5 feet wide by 2.5 feet wide. And instead of getting baptized this way, you get baptized this way. One way or the other, we're going to get you under the water over there, and it seems to work for everybody who's committed to becoming a Christian. So here's another shot at the kids. This is up in the worship service, and they just gather, and they come all the way up to the communion table. Just imagine a bunch of kids here, so many. And with the room you have, that the kids are just literally, parked around where the preacher is, and they listen intently. And they're well behaved. And a couple of times I wanted to take my kids and grandkids and kind of say, "You see that?" They can sit through a whole sermon without fussing or wanting to go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, or heaven forbid these days, playing on their cell phones. So, but the kids come, they love being there, very colorful and a beautiful sight. And of course, before you come in any of the buildings, you got to leave your shoes at the door. And so they all do that. Put this picture up just to show you some of the locals. That's them. India is the only country I'm aware of that has a McDonald's that does not serve hamburgers. They serve chicken. You can't have meat over there because the cow is a sacred animal that you probably already know. And when you're driving around in town to try to get from one place to another, and a bunch of cows decide to back across that road to go home, you might as well consider it a red light, because you're not going anywhere till them cows get to where they're going. Some of them have them as pets in their backyard. Some of them think that it's kind of a holy or sacred thing to do to have a pet cow in your backyard. And I'm just thinking about cleaning up my dog's mess. I can't imagine what you do with a cow that only fits in a garage, which is the only size I saw. But anyway, that's just kind of part of the scenery when you go around. My nickname growing up, my family was Tiger. It's always been Tiger. Nobody calls me Steve in my family. It's weird to hear them call me Steve. So when we passed a place that had a zoo of sorts, I couldn't pass up that fancy sign there that said Tiger. So that one was for the books. And of course, they were there. They advertised correctly. Beautiful tigers over there, white tigers, as you might imagine in India, that unfortunately is a cause of a large number of deaths in areas that are east, I think west of Calcutta and north and up in that area. But beautiful animals in part of India. Here's VJ and P. Mark and Renee and I. We're in Agra now, and we're looking at some of the buildings that are left and the right of Taj Mahal, which are, as you know, probably, it's a big tomb for a previous prime minister and his wife, I think is the other one. Interesting shot. It sits right on this side of a river, and if you look through the back on the other side of the river, they started to build another one for his wife. What, did they not? And the funding just didn't come through, and they didn't build it. But pretty impressive thing just for two bodies that are in there. Same drill, you got to take your feet up. So now from here, and again, Jerris is kind of pointing us in all directions. This was classic planes, trains, and automobiles. Flew places, took buses places, always fighting for a seat. So it was from here that, and you correct me, Juanita, you and Jerris flew on to New Delhi, and Jerris said, I got a treat for you. He says, I'm going to send you and your wife on a train, and I'm going to put you in a sleeper car. And I thought, well, finally, a little bit of comfort as I'm traveling from one place to another. I won't feel cramped, I won't feel crowded, and that's what I ended up with. I am 6'3" tall. That bed is 4 feet and some change. So too low to sit in because my head hit the top, and I could stretch out, but my feet would be out there with people walking back and forth through the aisle. So, but that was living high on the hog there in India when you got a sleeper car that you could actually try to catch some Z's in. But that was about as comfortable as it got. New Delhi, obviously a much bigger place. It kind of reminds you of Washington, D.C. walking around because of all the monuments and things there. Much bigger roads. You don't hear the horns as much. When you're in the little towns of Bhopal and Siliguri, what you'll see is all you hear is horns continuously blowing. And they don't do that because they're going to hit somebody or they feel in danger. They all beep their horns. I compare it to like a school of whales. They're just all beeping to let everybody know they're there. And because the cars are all jammed into one another, lines on the road are merely suggestive. Everybody kind of goes. And a lot of times when you're going down the road and an ambulance comes behind you, he sits in line with everybody else until he gets where he's going. There's no way to get around to get someone to a hospital. So, but this was big. This was just a different scene and to visit the brothers there. I put this slide in because this family that's standing around Renee, we have no idea who they are, where they came from. They just saw the tall white woman and said, can we take a picture with you? She said, sure. And she runs into this again here in a little bit. Also up there is Indira Gandhi's memorial. This was a prime minister who was murdered, assassinated, whatever. Somebody came into where she was in this area with a bomb. And because of their political and or religious views, they killed her, and they put this thing in. This is just a nice picture Renee took of the guard. And guards like this stand on that memorial 24/7 with this beautiful glass sidewalk that bears the area where she walked and where she died. And here's Renee again. She gets inside this building, and again, everybody sees a tall, blonde-haired white lady, and they start kind of crowding around her. And they want to talk to her, and they want to get autographs, and they want pictures with her. And that kind of got a little claustrophobic for her. So she loved it initially, but after a while, she started kind of giving me the high sign of, get me out of here. I can't get away. But it just, they love to do it. They love to talk to you. They love to talk about where you're from. A gentleman who was standing right behind me when I took this picture stared at me and just looked at me, and I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And his response was, "What do you think of India?" He wanted to know what Americans thought of India. They're not really keen on the British, which you may understand if you know your history a little bit, but if you were an American, they were interested in you, and they were interested in what you thought of their country. And so I told him the truth. I said I thought it was a beautiful country. I thought it was a very colorful country. I thought, and he just lit up. That went from a frown to this big smile on his face that somebody would take the time to say, "I enjoy being here. I enjoy your company." And that's kind of what the people are like. Not suspicious of you, but they want to know who you are, where you came from. This is Siliguri. This is that place further north under Nepal. Not so much here with the big roads and that sort of thing. Very humble way to make a living. They sell things. A lot of wood carvings up there. I saw more bedposts and headboards than I saw anything else. They find all this wood and they make it and they sell it and they make a living. The preacher up there on the right with VJ. Narish. Narish is up there, and you'll see that Narish has put a school together for these kids, and these kids are Hindu, they're Islam, doesn't matter. This is a private school that he maintained and maintains, and the parents would just want them to go to that private school, so they sent them. I wouldn't call it a catch. The proviso was, the understanding was. You hear about the Bible. They get taught the Bible. They sing songs. They do all these things. And they get their education. And he managed that. Kids were cute. Again, very attentive. And if you want to get an 8x4 foot steel plate from one end of the city to the other, this is how you do it. You find a bike with a lot of air in the tires, and you get where you're going. You just didn't see any trucks hauling things. Very, very humble a place to live in. This is an interesting picture that I wanted to show you. This too is in Siliguri. Anybody know what they're doing? Take a shot at what's going on there. They're mining rocks. This river in the wintertime, rains come down out of the mountains and this river is just full. But when it's gone, it brings down a lot of these rocks from the mountains with it. And these people harvest these rocks out of the river and they sell them. They sell them to locations where walls need to be built to protect water from coming up on their land, and you can see they come in there with trucks and horses, and some ladies carrying the baskets on their head, but this is what they do to kind of scrape some money together to make a living. Just thought it was very unique. Never saw this anywhere else in the world I've been, and interesting thing. Further in Imphal, we arrive at Imphal, and this is the place that has that historic World War II event that occurred there, but our brother up there has a school of preaching there as well. And this is the kids that you'll see from a children's home that have come up to just kind of participate in the service and the singing and the song service, but another school of preaching. So we have a school of preaching in Hyderabad, Bhopal, Imphal, Kurnool, which we'll see in a little bit. Am I missing one? Anyway, and the duration is about every 6 months. They have a class, they go out on their own, they start establishing a congregation. This is Our Sangha is his name, and this is the work that he does up there. There's that memorial I was telling you about where the last battle occurred. It's down the road. Down the road further from Imphal is a place called Chirangchangpur, something close to that. And it's a children's home called Angel's Place. We don't support that children's home directly with funds, but we do drive down there when we go there And we teach the staff and the kids that are there. And they range from, what's the youngest one there, Juanita? 4 or 5? About 6 years old. And they go all the way up until they're 17 or 18 and decide to get out and go on their own. Great school, fed every day, not much more than rice and bread and some of the basic staples of life to keep you alive. But again, funding to take care of that many people is difficult. And because there's so many people in India, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon how you look at it, there's a lot of these kind of places. Kids got nowhere else to go. And people take the time to try to take care of them and raise funds to make sure that they grow up and be able to get on their own. There's the troops. They enjoyed our company. They love each other. They sing wonderful. No mischief that I saw. But this was way out in the country. This was out in the woods and the forest, and you only get electricity so often during the day. So you get electricity till I think 10 o'clock, and then you climb under your mosquito nets and you get some sleep, and then the electricity goes off. So if you got to get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, you better have a cell phone, and it better have a little light on it, because otherwise you're not going to see where you're going. And they turn the electricity back on about 8 o'clock in the morning, but a lot of times the power goes in and out. It doesn't faze these kids at all. Pretty girl. There's my wife dressed up like you may have seen the slides before. Juanita so often does when she's over there. Just beautiful garb that they put on. This is in Kurnool, south of Hyderabad. And there's the sisters. The girls on her left and right, their father, Isaac, has been an elder and a good brother for so many years. And think of him in your prayers, because he had a stroke and he went to the hospital and he came home. And I think Jerris has told me on the phone that he's being fed through a tube. Long-time faithful brother, so much good work done, and he's really having some health problems down there. And that's his family, his wife and his daughters. Me and the boys. School of Preaching was there. Got to do a lesson there with them, and before it started, when we were doing Bible study again, I said they're so colorful. I just took a picture from behind the women to see all their different headdress and garb, and then one little girl cheating there, looking to the left to see what's going on. But it's that way in every congregation, every service. It's just a great experience. And this is the last slide I show you. That's Mary. We got to name her. You know, there are times in India where they'll have a baby and they'll wait till they figure out who they want to name their baby. And I remember when we were picking this little one up, I said, "What's her name?" And they said, "Well, she hadn't been named yet. You name her." So we named her Mary. I'm not sure why or how, but that little girl 9 years ago was named Mary. And once again, there's the look of never seen anything that white in my whole existence. And there he is. Unfortunately, this little girl lost both of her parents to COVID and is in a shelter of some sort, taking care of herself. So anyway, that's just around India in 30 minutes or less. And I just wanted to read a couple of Bible verses to you that seem to apply here. Jesus told us in John chapter 12, he says, "When I'm lifted up from the earth, I will draw people to myself." And then James reminded us, "You draw near to God, God will draw near to you." And these verses mean something to me because when I was over there, this is the sense that I got. These people were drawn to the Word. They came from everywhere. They came from long distances. Some of the stuff that we spend money on are bicycles, so that these people don't have to walk 2 or 3 hours to get to a church building. They ride their bikes there. But they come and they listen. And at all times of the day. There were times when Jerris would say, go take a nap and get ready to get up and leave here about 8 o'clock, because at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, we were going to have a Bible class in somebody's home. And they work all day. And they still want you there. They just, and not that doesn't happen in the United States, but not on the scale that you see in India. It's just a wonderful thing to see. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to participate in. There's like I said, over 1 billion people there. They're being drawn in by Islam. They're being drawn in by Hinduism. They're being taken in all different directions. And were it not for the fact that we had Christians there congregations there, schools of preaching there, that would be far worse. We get Hindu people come in and convert and get baptized. We have Islamic people that come in and listen to the word and convert and get baptized. And that's the only way it's going to happen. You know, prayer is necessary. Funding is necessary. You got to put people on trains, planes, and automobiles to get them there to do the work. Make sure the facilities are being built up to where they're supposed to be, and that sort of thing. And I wanted to close with this, also related to this type of work and mission work. In John chapter 4, verse 35, Jesus said, "The fields are white for harvest." And I often mispronounce that. I always say the fields are ripe for harvest, but in reality, it's the same thing. And I'm not much of a farmer, but if you're a farmer, you know that when those grains of wheat are matured, the only way they become mature is that chaff or that shell that's been protecting them dies and produces that wheat. And when they die, they turn white. So if you're looking over a wheat field and it's about that time, the way a farmer knows that it's ready to be harvested is you just kind of see a sea of white. And so Jesus says the fields are white with harvest. But more importantly, what he says in Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 and 38, "Then he said to the disciples, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest.'" That's the message for mission work in India. That's the message for mission work anywhere. But as long as Jerris and Juanita continue to do it, and as long as Renee and I get to assist and help, those prayers have to continue, because when you do, and you believe those prayers are answered, and they are, then you become part of that program. And it's a blessing to do. So anyway, I shared that with you. There's 10 minutes left, which I had designated for Jerris, who's still kind of making his way here. So you get free time back to yourself. Unless you have any, there's Jerris. Unless you have any questions about India or anything you saw up here, I'll field them.
What's that little red dot on some of the women there between the...
It's their Hindu, is it necessarily Hindu, Juanita, or is it? Yeah, they have a mark, and I don't want to loosely contribute it to Catholics on Ash Wednesday, but it signifies who they are and what they. You saw a lot of that in the crowds that were around Renee, because they were just folks from the street. But anyway, yeah, and it's not and usually it's a one-stop trip over there, here to London to Hyderabad, and Hyderabad back, but a great trip. Yes, sir.
What's the current political climate in India, and how free are you to teach and preach the gospel?
You know what, Jerris, that's probably a good question for you to answer. We got 10 minutes left if you want to field it, but basically the government is a very, he's pro-Indian, not real fond of his neighbors. He doesn't like Pakistan coming down in there and wheeling things, and he kind of rules with a strong arm. But there have been, to my knowledge, there's no oppression for the churches. Would you agree with that, Jerris, that the current government doesn't oppress Christians who are going over there to? I'll let you. Yeah, he's 40 years he's at it. He knows a little more. We got 10 minutes left. You want to finish it? We timed it that way anyway, so your entry was perfect. I'll just give him my microphone. Do you want your slides up?
If it's possible, we might.
Yeah, his short slide, and there's your button that'll move them forward.
Which way?
Green, over, and that backs them up.
Okay. That's a very good question, but first of all, let me apologize. I got sick coming over here. It's not anything I want to give you. Thankfully, no one should ever have this problem. But it's irritable bowel syndrome, and unexpectedly, it hit. And so it's delayed me. And I thank you. Brother Steve, I always said that you were ready and I didn't need to train you at all, and I'm right. You did a fine job, and I was listening, and I appreciate it ever so much. The question concerning about persecution of the brethren comes in very subtle forms. It is there, but the government's very clever. They don't tell you what they're doing, that they have their ways. For example, Christians are not considered full citizens. And that means that if you send your children to school, those schools are supported by Hindu taxes. You're not a Hindu, therefore you have to pay tuition. And so that is a form of a very severe form of persecution against Christians, and certain people will drop out of Christianity because of that. They want their kids to get educated, and they don't understand that there might be some other way to do it. So they yield on that particular point. Are there other questions? I think that's about the best I can do on that. There is persecution that takes place from time to time. I've known of very severe cases, places where I have preached, gone back the next day, and one member from the crowd was hanged in the nighttime because he attended the meeting, was told not to attend it. Anyway, that kind of thing happens. They're very, the Knoxvilleite group is very terrible. Their brutality seems to know no ends. If you wear glasses, you're suspect of being a Christian. And they will come at you in any way they possibly can in certain communities. And it's isolated here and there, and it's not nationwide. And so that's why we don't hear much about it, and that's a part of their plan, and so that they don't draw a lot of international attention to what's happening. And so they're very clever about what they're doing. And the present Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, is very ultra right-wing conservative Hindu. He's a very radical Hindu. Never think otherwise about him. And that has its problems for the Christian community. Yes?
Are your lives in danger there at times?
I've experienced that, yes. Like Paul said about himself, danger on land, danger on sea. I've been in danger in many ways, and I have been hunted by the Knoxvilleites. They wanted to kidnap me and hold me for ransom, and no telling what else they might have done had they succeeded. But the Lord blessed us. We were able to escape from that. And it's interesting how the providence of God comes about, isn't it? That happened because we had an oil leak. We had hit a rock. It penetrated the oil pan. And we were supposed to speak in a village about 6 or 8 miles from where that happened. And all of a sudden, it became impossible for us to travel. And so, looking at that situation, I told the brethren, I said, it's best that some of you brethren go there. You can spend the night. It's a very difficult place. I won't be of much help in that place. And so they did. In the nighttime, the Knoxvilleites came looking for the white preacher, and with their guns. And our brethren were pushing the car because there was no tow truck or anything. So they were pushing the car. They'd hooked up some oxen to the front of it. They were helping the oxen along the way. And they thought that our brethren were mechanics and left them alone. And in the meantime, I preached at another village that night. So several times I've been threatened, and it is a very awesome, frightening experience sometimes. But don't let that bother you. I think the Lord will be there. He'll protect you if you want to come and go with us. We'll try to keep you out of harm's way. Mostly we know where the situations are. One of the houses where I was supposed to stay was a government house. bombs were planted in that house during the day. I had suspected that there might be some difficulty in that village, and I had told the brethren, I said, you scout around and see what the Knoxvillites are doing. Just talk subtly to the villagers and find out. There are ways of learning things, you know. And so they did learn, and I stayed back from that village. That night, that bungalow, as they call it, was blown up. So I guess I could have made the paper the next morning. But anyway, those kind of things happen from time to time. Any other good questions? I think the bell may have rung, did it? First bell. Well, I won't show any particular slides. You've seen Brother Steve's slides. And the good thing about Brother Steve's work as a co-missionary is he's going to be working with the very same people that I've been taught in places where he's already visited. So he's familiar with them, and maybe we can talk more about that, at least in the elders meeting when I visit with them. But I thank you very much. Looking forward to the worship service with you. Thank you, Brother Steve.